I will rain down on a godly ranking firestorm upon you. You're going to have to call the ranking United Nations and get a ranking binding resolution to keep me from ranking destroying you. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker. I will massacre you.
What is up? Welcome into Adjust the Ranks. I am Jeremy Shulman here to present to you a standard mock draft. We are in the throes of fantasy football season here in August, and as you can see, things have started up already. So please make sure to join us. We're doing 30 mocks here in 30 days at the FFU, the Fantasy Football Universe, and here we are on the clock. So we'll tell you what we're doing in just a second, but of course, I'm going to have to pick. I want a running back, and Derrick Henry is a smash pick for me here at the 107. You can see we're doing a 12 team. We had a full session here just a minute ago, but now we have nothing but a few people left. That's how it goes here in the beginning of August, but we will roll with it anyway. So, of course, what you need to make sure you're doing is not doing what the computer is doing here and, mocking off of ADP, because ADP tends to be based on half PPR, on full PPR. You really need to be taking running backs as much as possible in your standard leagues, especially the workhorse guys. But if you look at the first round and how it went through based on ADP, we have Saquon, Jamar, Bijan, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jahmyr Gibbs, the top six. Of course, Derrick Henry should be in there. But guys like, Puka Nacua, who see extreme volume, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, those guys are great. But of course, yardage is really what we're after. It's possible with a Matthew Stafford injury, for example, for Puka, or with Amon-Ra and the, Ben Johnson now out of town. It's very possible that these guys see a decrease in yardage, even though they're going to see a very similar situation here in terms of the targets that they likely receive. So as we just take a look, what we're going to do right now, just for a second, is we're going to pause the draft because it doesn't seem like there's too many people here. And we're just going to see how the first few rounds went. Of course, if you look at the end of the first round, we have Nico, Malik Neighbors, and Brock Bowers. I mean, those three guys, I think, are absolute volume hogs. They're going to get in the end zone. They're certainly going to have their share of touches and yardage, but it's that high yards per target that we're after. Nico and Malik are certainly getting that, if not getting insane volume, or both. And then those guys are threats in the red zone too. So I'll take them over Amon-Ra and Puka, and then Bowers, of course, the no-brainer. If you look in the second round, as we fire this back up, and I just take Breece Hall, Marion Hampton probably, again, that insane volume. You look at Genty at the 201, Brian Thomas, McCaffrey, Achane, Ladd, and Jonathan Taylor at the 26, as Sleeper goes completely nuts here. Bucky Irving, Drake London, Josh Jacobs, Trey McBride, Josh Allen, and A.J. Brown. So there's a lot happening in these drafts. Certainly, you definitely need to make sure that you get yourself a quarterback. But if we look at the settings here, you see there's one QB, two running backs, two wide receivers, and two flexes. So, of course, as we let Sleeper do its thing, of course, you have the opportunity here to start for running backs. That's what you're most likely going to want to do, unless you can get those elite guys at the top, like we mentioned, Malik Neighbors, the Brock Bowers type. But you do need to pivot to wide receiver. And look, I don't care what format you're playing in this year. You need touchdowns. You need yardage. Jameson Williams is going to be the guy to give it to you. I like him over Tet. I like him over guys like Pickens and Waddle, even though I like those guys in their situations. I'm very happy to smash Jameson Williams anytime after the fifth round. And you see the names he's going around. Travis Hunter, we're not sure exactly what's going to go on with him in terms of his usage, DJ Moore, etc. And then I'll follow it up with it's either Olave or Judy for me. They're kind of interchangeable to me at this point. I think, they're both stuck in pretty terrible offenses. Judy does have the better defense, though, so I will go with Chris Olave. He is the one, and just in hopes that he is able to kind of piece it together here, while Tyler Shuck or Hayner or whoever, Rattler, whoever is going to kind of take the reins there. As you see Jerry Judy just off the board at the 706. So with everybody kind of out of the room here, we're going to pause the draft and just kind of take a break to see roughly halfway through what we're looking at. So, running backs are going to go off the board in your standard draft a lot sooner than this. So that's something to keep in mind. Amari and Hampton in the third round, that's not going to happen. Kyron, Chase Brown, those guys will be pushed up into the second round. And you're going to see guys like Marvin Harrison, probably Garrett Wilson fall a little bit as a result in your standard formats. But of course, the name of the game is touchdowns and secondarily yardage. So I like Brock Bowers and Trey McBride where they went in the first and second. I like George Kittle at the 4.8. He's continues to be a massive value. Double-digit touchdowns is likely. Pretty confident he got there last year. In fact, let's just double check. But no, just 8 touchdowns. But of course, the 78 receptions and 1,100 yards from Kittle, placing him as the half PPR tight end 2. So he was right up there, right? Trey McBride is someone here got there on elite reception volume. George Kittle with those 8 touchdowns is, fantastic value. And as you can see, he's going at the 4.08. So if you're talking about tight ends, I love that for them. And then, of course, guys like Cortland Sutton, Devontae Adams, again, presuming health from Matthew Stafford. These are guys that I want to target and prioritize in standard leagues because, again, we're all about the touchdowns. So let's go a little bit deeper through the 4th round. You see Burrow and Hurts go off the board. Patrick Mahomes in the 6th, sure. Right now, we're working with 4 point per passing touchdown. So we do want to prioritize those running quarterbacks. And again, in standard, where you're not totally sure where your points are going to come from consistently, aside from the highest volume guys. But when you get to the 4th, 5th, and 6th round, for example, you see at the 4.06, I'm making a bet on Chuba Hubbard that Chuba is going to be a guy who continues to see that elite volume. And look, I don't think Rico Dowdle is an extreme threat to Chuba Hubbard by any means. At the same time, there were reports today that, for example, James Conner, who went just a couple of picks after him, is going to be splitting duties with Trey Benson. So, and I believe that was out of James Conner's mouth. So, what we need to really consider is where are those high volume guys? Who are they going to be this year? And you can look at all those running backs in the 4th round, for example, Kenneth Walker, Joe Mixon, who's still, for some reason, going in the 4th with his injury history. When is Joe Mixon going to play? I don't know. It's not looking great for the start of the season. We'll have to see and just monitor, but there's not a ton of news coming out. There's no need for teams to clarify injury situations. So Joe Mixon to me is a complete wild card, but then you got Alvin Kamara there at the beginning of the 4th round, the 4.03, right? All of these guys have kind of their concerns. Kamara probably the safest one, even though I do love me some Kenneth Walker this season. If we look at the 5th round, we see a ton of wide receivers. I already talked about Jameson Williams, but Devonta Smith, DK Metcalf, right? These are guys that I think certainly Metcalf, guys who are red zone threats. Ted McMillan is a great pick at the end of the 5th. But for example, Zay Flowers, a guy who has not scored more than 5 or 6, I believe it's 5, but it could be 6 touchdowns in a season. That's not necessarily a guy that I want to go after in a standard league. Rashee Rice with his situation, no thank you. Like I said, prefer Jameson Williams because he has big play potential. If he touches the ball, he can take it to the house, which means you get that yardage, and then you get that touchdown on top of it. So I love that. Ted McMillan is just the red zone threat. But then Jalen Waddle at the 6.5. I mean, Jalen Waddle in a format like this is severely undervalued. So a lot of things happening on the board here. But now as we get into the second part of the draft, it's important to consider where your lineup is and where the upside is for you. Here, obviously, I need to fill quarterback and tight end. I'm happy with either going very early or very late on those positions. So I'm happy to have filled out my entire roster otherwise, starting roster. And you see we have about 4 bench spots here just to kind of keep things quick. And things are very quick here because we did have a full room not 5 minutes ago. And then the room deserted once they found out it was going to be on, on stream. So it's okay. It's all good. We pressed through. I'm going to look at, we'll go Bo Nix here. I do like Bo Nix's potential as a running quarterback. Of course, Kyler Murray is certainly a guy that you can take there as well. You see Kyler Murray as someone who went. Baker Mayfield, I just don't think the touchdowns are sustainable. The situation is great, but pretty much everyone in the fantasy community is preaching regression from Baker this season. Will it definitely happen? Maybe not. But it is possible. So something to consider. And then I have tight ends here. I don't need to force it. At the same token, I'm just going to go ahead and stack Bo Nix with his potential number one target. Look, it's probably Cortland Sutton, but Evan Ingram is most likely the second target at worst in this offense. We know RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins are probably not going to be, commanding 60, 70, 80 targets a piece. Certainly not. Marvin Mims just isn't used a ton. Pat Bryant, a rookie, right? Troy Franklin just hasn't, materialized into anything. So what do we got? We got Vele there, 27-year-old, second year, Tavon Vele. So it's Evan Ingram, Cortland Sutton, and no one else there. So I really do like that. And if you see what we're working with here now, as I just give it a quick pause and run to my team. All right, so this is our starting lineup, and I'm pretty happy with this, especially in standard. We got Bo Nix, counting on him to throw touchdowns, but also running 4-point per passing touchdown league and give you that steady floor. Evan Ingram, I think, is an insane value, but I think he also provides that floor as a number 2 target. And then when he scores, which, look, can he score 10 touchdowns? Yes. Will he score 10 touchdowns? I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty bullish on him. I think that's definitely in his range of outcomes. I wouldn't be shocked if he did. That said, we're projecting him more for 6, 7 touchdowns if he can get there, which I think he can, because we expect Bo Nix to throw about 25 to 27 touchdown passes this season. If Evan Ingram can get to the 7 touchdown range, he's already a value in the 8th round for you. But you see the rest of this lineup here. Of course, we faded wide receiver in this format in favor of the running backs, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Omarion Hampton, and Chuba Hubbard. Very happy with that build. Hampton's an interesting case, but I think we'll talk about that afterwards. But you see my lineup is full, so I can now just go here and choose best player available. I do like the tight ends, but I'm not going to double stack tight end early. My deficiency is wide receiver. So those 2 San Francisco wide receivers at the top of the board are staring me down. Mecca Egbuka is very interesting because we're not sure what's going on with Chris Godwin. But if I want to kind of go after the guy that I think will be utilized heavily, I'm just going to make the bet on Ricky Pearsall. We saw what Pearsall was able to do in limited real work, after coming back from being shot an injury last season, and he was able to kind of put it all together. But if I'm looking here, Egbuka is still available, which is really nice. But I got to go ahead and smash Tank Bigsby. I am buying all of the camp hype for Tank this season. And with 5 running backs that I feel will get, will or at least have the potential to get that insane volume, I'm very happy with where this draft is going right now. Again, we're looking for touchdowns. Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor, look no further. Of course, those guys are going to get it for you. Hampton, look, Najee Harris is in a similar situation to Joe Mixon, less severe. But again, we don't know exactly how severe that eye injury is for Najee. So we're just going to have to see what happens. All I know is that Najee is in camp. He's not practicing. He's sitting there with gigantic, grandma style blue blockers on to protect the eye. And Omarion Hampton is getting the work. So behind that offensive line, which will be, if it's not already considered, will be considered the best in the league, certainly as a pass blocking unit. But those guys are road graders as well. Omarion Hampton is going to have an excellent season. And even beforehand, look, he was the number 2 running back on a lot of people's boards coming out. He was drafted as such, right? Certainly after Genty. And then, not only that, but he's getting all of the work in camp. Najee, it was not a Charger last year. So that just means that he's a little bit behind the 8 ball. Yes, he's a veteran back, but he's not going to be worked into this system. And he's not necessarily super familiar with it. Does it matter for someone like Najee, who's just really going to, be given the ball 15-ish times a game and be told to run straight forward? Not really. At the same time, What's the status of the eye? Is there a depth perception issue? Is there a blurring issue? If you listen to Establish the Runs, Establish the Run podcast, Adam Levitan has talked about this ad nauseum, just that he's been searching and searching for a lot of details on Najee. There haven't been a lot of details. Remember, this news broke a week after the 4th of July accident. When it happened, Najee was still in the hospital at that point. He was in the hospital for, I think, almost 2 weeks. Just kind of being monitored, right? But again, we're not sure what's going on there. So I think Amarian Hampton, you see him at the 3.7 here. Amarian Hampton is going to be going, in a couple of weeks in the early 3rd round. And when you're talking about a standard format here where you're banking on touches and touchdowns and yardage, Amarian Hampton, I think, is going to be much better than it looks like. He's roughly the RB12 here off the board for 6. Yeah, RB13 off the board. Who do you want? You want Amarian Hampton, or do you want Kyron Williams with an injured Matthew Stafford, where they might struggle to, move the football I don't know. Do you want Chase Brown? I don't know. I think Hampton is good here. But you look at the guys after him, Breece Hall or Hampton. I'll take Hampton at this point, and I did. James Cook or Hampton. There's regression coming for Cook potentially. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Cook, but Amarian Hampton, again, behind that offensive line, I will take it. That's enough to talk about Hampton. Let's jump back into the draft and pick my final 2 guys. Jaden Blue is an interesting character, but I'm not going to go with him. So is Jerome Ford. I think Dylan Sampson is probably far down the board. And if he is, I'll grab him here. I like Dylan Sampson. I like Nick Chubb as well in this format. Chubb probably a better selection now that I think about it. If I wasn't rushed with the 30-second clock and doing the pod and everything happening, simply because he's just going to be a guy who, has the potential to see work. I know his head coach called him old, basically said father time comes for everyone, which is, you never want to hear that. At the same time, look, who knows, man? I mean, it's very possible that, Chubb could receive 60%, 70% of the carries while they heal up. Sorry, we're talking about Joe Mixon, if he even plays. And at the end here, DeAndre Hopkins, I don't love it, but I do love the potential for red zone usage. Again, in a standard format, let's just go ahead and get all of the touchdowns we can. At this stage in the 12th, I do like upside. For example, Kyle Williams was on the board. He's interesting. I just don't see him getting, more than 4 to 5 touchdowns in his rookie season. Maybe surprises. Maybe Diggs absolutely steals all the coverage away. And Kyle Williams is left wide open. But when you have Hunter Henry there, when you have Travion Henderson, in a Josh McDaniels offense, I really think the situation there is going to lend itself more to Kyle Williams seeing fewer and fewer opportunities of red zone. Pop Douglas is being talked up as well. So give me DeAndre Hopkins. Christian Kirk in the 12th is also a really good bet, I think. We were just talking about that Houston offense. The defense is very good. That's kind of the only struggle I have with Christian Kirk. So, but it's really difficult to kind of figure out exactly who these guys are going to be. But look, you're just taking bets on, who's going to get you the most points at the end. So let's take a look at some of these teams. First, I'll run through my team here at the 107. You see, I started running back heavy, which, again, in your standard drafts, I imagine that's going to be the case throughout the 1st and 2nd round. We see a lot of guys, who just don't consistently who are more volume hogs, right? This is the half PPR and PPR mindset of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Puka Nacua. Those guys have incredible potential. We've seen it on display. But Amon-Ra, you're going to want him to score a few more touchdowns than he actually does. And Puka Nacua, just with the Matthew Stafford stuff, the injury stuff with him from last year, is a concern. The rest of those guys are great. But you see the 3rd round, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison. These are all guys with, question marks in terms of, can they score consistently? Can they see crazy high volume consistently in their offenses that, at least with JSN and Wilson, they've all changed. Those offenses, new quarterbacks for both of those guys, new coordinator for JSN as well, new head coach and coordinator for Wilson. So that's kind of up in the air in terms of how much volume we'll see from them. For example, do we want to make the bet on those young guys here in a redraft standard format, or would you prefer to make the bet on Tyreek Hill just, managing his crazy and just being the old Tyreek Hill. It's possible. T. Higgins, also not so bad. Marv, I think, is probably the best of the bunch here because we know the talent is there. All we need is Kyler to kind of get it together and figure out how to find his targets in Harrison and Trey McBride in the red zone. So we'll run through my team here. It's from the 107. It's Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Marion Hampton, Chuba Hubbard. I think Chuba will be there for you. Like I said, I don't think Hampton will be at the 307, but I think Chuba will be. And then Jameson Williams, anytime after in the 5th or beyond, I'm smashing him. He's going to dominate this year. I'm so high on Jameson Williams this year. It's ridiculous. The camp talk on Jameson Williams is out of control. They're making him become a more complete route runner, which is kind of the goal of new offensive coordinator over there. I think it's Morton. Name fails me, who took over for Ben Johnson, but Jameson Williams has every opportunity to be a complete stud this year. Maybe it takes a little bit away from Amon-Ra, but certainly I'm fading Sam Laporta as a result of that. Will that come to fruition? I'm not sure. You still got Gibbs as well and Monty back there, so we'll see. But Jameson Williams for me. And then the 6 with Jalen Waddle off the board in this format and Jordan Addison at the 608, just dealing with, who knows how many games he's going to be suspended for this year, but it's going to happen. You can see that Chris Olave for me. I was talking earlier, it was between Chris Olave and Jerry Jeudy. I don't love those offenses. Another way that you could go is Calvin Ridley and Cam Ward getting all of the hype so far this offseason in terms of just how he's approaching the game. Will that come to fruition right away? I don't know. He's a rookie in terms of Ward, but Calvin Ridley is his number one target. And then Rome Odunze. Look, Rome Odunze at the 702, it's good value. It just kind of depends what you think is actually going to happen there. We got Komet, who's more than serviceable. I'd say he's at least an average NFL starting tight end. Of course, Colson Loveland was drafted to that team. Of course, Luther Burden is an absolute animal back there. And DeAndre Swift is no slouch in the passing game. So will Rome get all of the targets and touches that he deserves? Because I do think he's a very good player. I don't know. It's going to be really difficult for second-year quarterback. Look, Caleb Williams was the 101 for sure, but he was a second-year quarterback nonetheless in his third offensive system in, basically a year's time here. So he's got the full offseason. I believe in Caleb this year, but it's a lot. There's a lot stacked against Rome Odunze being this, this crazy volume hog, and especially in standard, if he only catches 70 balls, and Calvin Ridley catches 90, which I think is totally reasonable for both players. Who do we think is going to have more touchdowns? Who do we think is going to have more yardage? How is that going to be distributed amongst both of their teams in the Bears and the Titans? So for me, it's Ridley there, but Jeudy as well. We saw what he can do last year. So that's kind of where I'm at with those wide receivers. Diggs, I love as a value in the 809. You got Emeka Egbuka, who was talking about earlier at the 1010, just because Chris Godwin's injury is probably going to keep him out a little bit longer than we would like. But again, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave for me in the 5th and 6th round. Bo Nix at the 707. I like him more than Baker this year simply because Bo Nix runs. Baker ran a ton last year. I think he had about 400 rushing yards most of his career. So, taking nothing away from Baker. But we'll have to see. Liam Cohen gone, another promoted offensive coordinator from within. That's a good sign. But Godwin hurt, Evans a year older. We got Egbuka, right, who's certainly going to help step in and fill a void there. But I'm going to take the bet on Bo Nix just running a little bit more. The upgraded weapons with my next pick in the 8th round, Evan Ingram, who's going to help him out there as well. We'll see if Pat Bryant can also get on the field early. If not, I think it's a good sign, hopefully, because then they'll have someone else like Marvin Mims doing a lot there for him. But another really good offensive line there in Denver as well as Tampa, as well as a few of these other players. But give me Bo Nix and the rushing upside. Kyler Murray, I probably maybe would have considered over Bo Nix. We will see what happens there, but I don't think it's a bad bet with either one. Then I took a stab at Ricky Pearsall, finished it up with some camp hype / situational goodness there with Bigsby and Dylan Sampson in the 10th and 11th, and DeAndre Hopkins, complete stab in the dark there for me. But I do like him over everyone who came after him. Jaden Blue, I get it if you want to go Jaden Blue or even Jerome Ford there, but I needed a wide receiver. Christian Kirk isn't necessarily doing it for me in standard, so DeAndre Hopkins, is Rashad Bateman going to catch 12 touchdowns with DeAndre Hopkins in town if Hopkins is healthy? I think absolutely not. So you're just hoping on some red zone usage for him. But some other wide receivers I could have taken if you look at the board. Luther Burden in a standard, no thanks. I talked about Kyle Williams already. Maybe someone like Adam Thielen, if he's got another year left in him, would be an interesting pick there. Romeo Doubs catches a ton of touchdowns, underrated in that department. And then, Pop Douglas, who I talked about earlier as well. I think he's got a real opportunity to be that Edelman, Welker type, just running the slides. Already talked about it, calling himself the dark chocolate to the usual Patriots white chocolate running in that McDaniels system. So I like him as well. And there's a few other guys down the board, but you know what? Give me the shot on D-Hop there. So that's going to be this draft, but I think we will do another one. Vamp while also removing things from the stage. I'm not so sure, but we're going to give it a shot. 26 minutes into this stream, and we've got one standard mock done. We're going to give you an extra standard mock, presuming I've pulled it up. I have, and we will show you what we're doing here. Let's make sure you can see it. All right. So look, if you have a Fantasy Pro subscription, maybe even if you don't, you can just go on there and put it. This draft simulator is fantastic. If you've never used it, it's at least interesting and at least do what Sleeper just did for us here. We went from the 7th, so let's go from the 12th position here, and I'll just change the settings to what we had earlier. We're not going to discuss defense and kicker because if you hear all of the advice that you get from many fantasy analysts, it's punt those to the last few rounds. Who cares? And it's really just because they're not predictive. It's really hard one year to the other, figuring out, for example, as a kicker, who's going to be the best kicker, which team is going to be good enough to get into field goal range, but not good enough to score. And then, of course, if that kicker is going to make all their kicks and be able to keep their job or not, visit the massage parlor or whatever it was that Justin Tucker was accused of doing. Which, we don't condone or support any of that. At the same time, we're talking about fantasy football here. So we want to make sure that, he's not on a team right now. Doesn't matter. Neither here nor there at the same time. We just need guys who play the game is my point. So let's start this draft here. This is going to be a mock simulator. And let's see if we can we are picking from the 12. And let's go to the latest ECR, that's expert consensus rank. You can see the players who were drafted already. And I get 2 picks here. And remember, we're the same format. So let's pull up the team. We got quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flexes here. But look, I love Nico Collins, love Malik Neighbors, but I got to go Ashton Genty here. But you see the board is a little bit different already, right? We have Derrick Henry already off the board. No surprise there. Somebody like, Jahmyr Gibbs is there. Bijan Gibbs and Henry off the board. Saquon Barkley as well. So there's 4. That's what I was looking for. But I'm going to draft Ashton Genty. I just think, again, in a standard situation, he's a no-brainer there. And then, I wouldn't hate going Nico or Neighbors, but I'm going to try and start off with a 2 running back build. And we're going to look at Ashton Genty and Jonathan Taylor and see what pops up. So I will show you the board here in just a second. All right, so here's what we're looking at. Let's kind of maximize this. Get this over here. All right, so here's the board now. We've got Saquon went 101. I don't think you're going to see that. Bijan at the 105 is absolutely crazy. Please draft Bijan first. In standard, if not Jamar Chase. CD Lamb for me is the only other one in consideration. Saquon is right there, of course. I just believe in Bijan more than Saquon this year, given everything, the volume and everything that's going on there. But if If you draft Saquon 101, who cares? He is awesome. Christian McCaffrey at the 107. That's an interesting pick. You want him to be healthy, but I do think he's going to be in the back half of the first round regardless. So keep that in mind if you're drafting him. If he falls to the second, please smash him. And then you see these guys who are going to get in the end zone toward the back end. Brian Thomas, A.J. Brown at the 111. I don't hate that, but I do not like it over Malik Neighbors, over Nico Collins, like we saw. And Drake London, I'm so high on Drake London. I would probably take Drake London over A.J. Brown as well in a standard format. I just think he's going to go nuclear this year, but it's hard to argue with any of those picks. Josh Jacobs at the 204, of course. Achan, everybody's darling this year, and Kyron Williams are the running backs in the second round. And you see how the rest of that fell. Mike Evans at the 307 is a little rich for me, but you see Jamison Williams at the 304. Somebody has been using my rankings. Jamison Williams, absolute stud. JSN at the 311 with Jamison Williams at the 304 is a little crazy to me, but yeah, why not? Like I said, the yardage, the touchdowns are going to be there for JMO regardless. Let's go back here and let's look at what's left. So we have quarterback options, Joe Burrow, of course, but Trey McBride is still here. What is going on? Look, in our last mock, I went ahead and I'm going to grab Davante Adams as well. In our last mock, I went ahead and I grabbed Evan Ingram because I waited on tight end, but I do like the value of Ingram. Here, if you look at the board, for me, if I can get one of these top tight ends, you saw Kittle and Bowers go here at the 208 and 209. Look, it's possible. George Kittle will not be the first tight end off the board in your standard league draft, but he could be. And, you know, he should be, because George Kittle is, everybody's dropping like flies over there in San Francisco. And of course, look, Brock Bowers has the upgraded quarterback. He's got probably, arguably, a better situation than he had last year when he went nuclear. And he's got a second year in the league on top of that, and a second off season to get ready to produce. But George Kittle is just that guy. And, you know, it's even Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings, who are relatively healthy, are not completely healthy yet, while we kind of wait and figure out what's happening with Ayuk and the rest of whatever the heck is going on here. And of course, if Christian McCaffrey just goes down again, George Kittle has that contingent upside to go completely nuclear. But I bring those guys up to bring up the fact that Trey McBride at the 312 for me just feels like a screaming value. I don't think he's going to be there, but if any of these three tight ends fall to the 312 range, the back end of the third, you need to smash them regardless of format. You know, if it's maybe full PPR, I can see an argument to be made where maybe the volume will decrease for these guys. We know Trey McBride, for example, only scored 2 touchdowns last year, but I just don't see it. Really, regardless of format, I am just smashing any of these tight ends by the third round if they are available to me. So Trey McBride at 312 and Davante Adams, I don't love it because of what's going on with Matthew Stafford. They're saying it's a disc issue. He's seen a back specialist now twice in the last, I think, week and a half or so, last 10 days. So it's not looking great. We do have Jimmy Garoppolo. He's capable. He's a journeyman guy. So we're not so concerned with it, but he's not Matt Stafford, right? Prime Matt Stafford is going to, elevate Davante Adams. Jimmy Garoppolo, who played with Davante Adams in Vegas a few years ago, maybe when they were in LA as well, or not LA, Oakland. So they have familiarity there, but that's gonna be a difficult situation if it's not Matt Stafford. You see the rest of the board here go. Breece Hall at the 403, Amari Hampton at the 404. He doesn't belong there. He needs to be up where Mike Evans is at least. But you see quarterback craze happening here. Allen, Lamar, Daniels, Hurts, and Joe Burrow, all from the 301 to the 405. I think that's a little bit too crazy, and that's why I will let the value drop to me like a Trey McBride, and instead I will be drafting not a quarterback. So let's go back to the board. Let's see what the cheat sheet says here. Who's available? I'm not going to get any of these quarterbacks. In fact, I prefer to wait to kind of this range. Drake May, for example, in 4-point, Caleb Williams. These guys are going to give you rushing yards. May is going to quote unquote run less in this Josh McDaniels offense, but that doesn't scare me. I think that's going to actually benefit him in the passing department, his development. Maybe it'll shave a point or two off of his points per game. But at the same time, I think he's still a value there. But the real value that I like is Trevor Lawrence here in that new offense with new weapons and Tank Bigsby kind of coming on, and JJ McCarthy in that old offense with those old weapons who are absolutely destroying it. Kevin O'Connell really is the quarterback in Minnesota, and whoever you plug in, Sam Darnold, they're Josh Dobbs, they are cured. And they are, producing for you. So JJ McCarthy for me at value is kind of the guy who I'd probably end up targeting late here. And McCarthy, in addition to being pretty accurate, McCarthy is having, is in a situation where he's athletic enough to run. He didn't really utilize that skill, but he has it in his bag to get you 300 to 400 yards, a la Baker Mayfield last year, who we talked about a little earlier. So I love that. In a 4-point, I don't love Penix or Geno. I really do like them regardless, but those guys aren't going to run much. Bryce Young is another name who I would look at down here. And if you want to get really crazy, Cam Ward. If you want to get even crazier, Anthony Richardson, just bet on him winning and holding the job for a complete year. But he is a game changer if he is able to do that. So let's go ahead and do a few more rounds here. Again, just looking at the board, Travion Henderson here at the 5'10", you see the rookies kind of coming off the board. Caleb at 5'08", RJ at 5'06". See guys like DeAndre Swift and Aaron Jones. These are great players to have in a half PPR and more so a full PPR. When we're talking about standard format, it gets a little dicey. I'd much rather have, for example, an Isaiah Pacheco, a David Montgomery, just because of the uncertainty of what is going to go on with these offenses, with these players, and how much volume they're going to get. So let's see who's available to us now here at the end of the 5th as we check out my team. So Genty, Taylor, Adams, and McBride. Like I said, I'm not going quarterback. We will see who's available here just in terms of ECR. Pollard is interesting, but no thank you. I'll prefer to wait a little bit on running back. And I will look at wide receiver here and fill my second hole. And it's either going to be Tet McMillan or Jalen Waddle, who we referenced earlier. Olave, Judy are still there. Roma Dunze is still there. This is difficult to pick here. I'm going to go with the rookie. I just think, Tet has that opportunity in standard format to kind of give you insane, red zone usage. All right, he's a big body. We know he can get up and get it, but he is a better receiver as well than he sometimes gets credit for. So I'll take Tet and hope on those touchdowns and that insane yardage. He was 12th off the board. Tet McMillan obviously thought of very highly by the Carolina Panthers and by most of the league going in the early first round. So Tet is my pick there. And then if I have to pick somebody else, just kind of mix things up a little bit. I like Calvin Ridley, but we'll go Waddle. Look. Here's what you have to know about the Miami Dolphins. They recently lost 2 pieces of the secondary. I think one for an extended time, one for the season. All right. So that is something that you need to consider. This defense is going to be even worse than we thought it was going to be. And they're just not going to be able to stop anybody. So things to consider here. When you're drafting Miami Dolphins, draft them. That's what you need to do. Make sure you draft them. And then let's see. I think let's just check the board. Yeah, Mark Andrews. I love that value there. And before we go on, we just have a couple of questions in the chat that I didn't get to yet. So let's get to them. What is up, Jamie? How you doing? Appreciate that. Jamie, friend of the show, been on the show a few times. Here's a question for Parker Bledsoe. Parker, would you rather have Henry and Devontae Adams or Achane and MHJ in full PPR? Interesting in full PPR because Achane is going to be that guy who's going to get you there. I mean, without Jonnu Smith there And we know that Tua, at least the plan last year, but we can assume the plan going forward, at least in part, is get the ball out of Tua's hands as soon as possible, because that offensive line is not great still in Miami. And, we know his concussion history. And that's why we saw Jonnu racking up the yak yards and taking those screens to the house. And that's why we saw Achane producing when he was healthy. But then Tua got hurt, right? And then Tua, was in and out, and it wasn't completely himself until a little bit later in the season. And we all know at this point the discrepancy between when Tua was in and Tua was out. Those splits for Achane were insanely, dramatically different. I think he was something like a back end RB3 when Tua was out of the game, and he was like the RB3 when Tua was in the game. So completely dramatic splits from Achane. But we're just talking about the Dolphins here. Achane and MHJ, or Henry and Adams. So full PPR, if we're talking about redraft, which is what we're doing here, I'm going to go Henry and Adams. I get Achane, but I think there's still a lot of variables there. I do think he's got to stay floor, but Henry still has that ceiling. He's just different. He's old, right? He shouldn't be doing what he's doing, but I mean, the guy was absolutely insane last year. With just what he was able to produce. Lamar Jackson isn't necessarily stealing touchdowns; they're just giving it to Henry. I'm riding that. And Devontae Adams, if, again, as we talked about earlier, the caveat of if Matthew Stafford is able to play, Devontae Adams, I think, is going to have a very, very nice season. MHJ and Achane are still a lot of ifs. I think Henry and Adams are the safer ones in redraft. If we're talking about dynasty, which I don't think we are, Parker, but in case we are, I get Henry and Adams if you're in a win now build. Achane and MHJ, you probably have to add like a first or a second to the Henry Adams side, but if you can get those guys, go for it. All right, let's pop back into this draft and wrap it up. So we are looking now at Olave, Odunze, Jerry Jeudy. So these are some nice names here at the running back position. So I am going to take a fourth wide receiver in this particular draft. I'm going to go with Rome. I like Jeudy and Olave a little bit better, but the upside of Rome is tantalizing in what should be a very good offense. By all reports, it is very interesting to see what he's been able to do, and Ben Johnson loves him, and he's playing the role that you want to see him play in that offense as well. And the offense is going to be good. So I don't hate Rome there over Olave and Jeudy, but I'm not super comfortable with that. What I am super comfortable with is smashing Tank Bigsby. Everybody, the beat writers, the fantasy writers, the people who just show up at camp, everybody is saying that Tank Bigsby looks insanely good. He looks better than Travis Etienne on damn near every rep. We got a Liam Cohen offense. This is the Bucky Irving to Travis Etienne's Rashad White, right? By all accounts, it seems that Tank Bigsby is going to come in and take over the early down role. He's already been a better inside runner than Tank Bigsby, than Travis Etienne. So he's proven that already. But it seems to be that the new Jacksonville coaching staff is seeing this and confirming it again. So is Tank Bigsby going to be the breakout player of 2025? I don't know, but I'm willing to take that chance and take that shot on him there. So let's look at my team. I do not have a quarterback, but I've pushed quarterback because I got Trey McBride in the third round. We got Ashton Genty, Jonathan Taylor at the 1-2 turn. Flipped Trey McBride and Devontae Adams. Not in love with Adams there, but we'll take a look at who else was on the board and talk about it. Then Tet at the 5-12 and Jalen Waddle at the 6-01. The wide receiver value was excellent in that particular range. And then here at the 7-12, again, I said it could have been Olave, it could have been Jeudy for me, but I went Rome. Just a bet on the offense, but I could see picking either of those three guys in that particular spot. And then Tank Bigsby is a smash for me in the late 7th, early 8th. I think you got to go ahead and take your chance here. I do need a quarterback, so let's take a look at that list. Justin Fields, we know he's got the dislocated toe. But in 4-point, I do like Fields, of course. But we got Dak, we got Drake, we got a lot of really interesting guys on the board still. So I'm going to punt quarterback even further and just collect value. Trey Benson is the name that I'm kind of leaning toward right now. Of course, Dylan Sampson is still on the board. So that's really interesting just because Quinshon Judkins is not yet a Cleveland Brown. He hasn't signed his contract. So I could see taking Dylan Sampson here, and you probably will have to reach for him in this range. We are at the 912, as you see up here, 108 overall. At the same time, I'm just kind of going to let him fall a little bit. Some people are believing in Jerome Ford, but give me the rookie over the steady Eddie, just fine running back in Ford. So I'm going to take Benson with the hype that I think it was James Conner who came out today. Let's see if we have the note here. That's Pat. Let's see. No, we don't. Maybe we have the note. No, it doesn't look like we have the note yet, but a note came out today. I think it was James Conner who said that he plans to split carries with Trey Benson. So that's going to vault him up boards for you. I don't think that Benson's going to be available at the end of the 9th for you anymore. Just keep that in mind as you prepare for your drafts over the next couple of weeks. So I'm happy with him. I would love to take a wide receiver here, and I'll take Steph Diggs. Again, remember, this is a standard format, so we're looking for guys who can score touchdowns and get yardage. And if Trey Benson's going to be that guy, let's say James Conner gets injured potentially, all right, he's got that contingent upside in addition to the fact that maybe he's just splitting work from the jump. And of course, these guys are handcuffs, right? Bigsby and Benson, if they're not the guys right away, they're handcuffs. They're high priority handcuffs in what should be offenses that can move the ball. So Genty, Taylor, McBride, Adams, Tetaroa. McMillan doesn't love Tet. Also, T-Mac works for Tetaroa McMillan. Jalen Waddle, Roma Dunze, Tank Bigsby, Trey Benson, Stephon Diggs in the 10th round. Give me that all day. Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin's a tough one. We talked a little bit about him. In fact, I'm probably going to end up, it doesn't look like he was picked, smashing Emeka Egbuka here at the 11-12 because Chris Godwin and his injury he had a second surgery, I think back in May, on that ankle that was completely twisted and turned 180 degrees. It looked gruesome and awful. It's going to take time. He's an old guy. I think he's 29 years old. So it's just really going to take time for Chris Godwin to kind of come back and be full strength. There's Emeka, though. He went at 11:04. I think that's an excellent value. He's getting hyped up. He's one of the top receivers in this class, and drafted by a team that presumably didn't need wide receivers. Emeka Egbuka there is probably going to eat early on. And if he's that good, he's just going to continue to eat all season. So some great value picks here in the 11th. Dylan Sampson, who we were just talking about, went as he should. Braylon Allen, who's getting talked up in camp about splitting work and being that early down back in New York. That's also possible. Jaden Blue as well, who is the most dynamic running back. Is he the most reliable running back? And will he get the most work? I don't know. But those are some interesting picks there. So we are going to wrap this draft now. I'm going to take a quarterback. Why not? We're just going to go Justin Fields. In fact, in a draft like this, of course, you're not going to have 12 rounds. You're probably going to have anywhere from 14 to 16 rounds with your shallow benches. But here in standard, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 running backs. I definitely want another running back. I have far too many wide receivers. I have 5 of them, but that's okay. But if I do look at the running back board, there's not a lot that I love, right? Miles Sanders, okay. Kareem Hunt, fine. I mean, these are guys I'm taking without the upside, and I really do want upside at this stage. So I'm going to kind of ignore all those. We got some rookie wide receivers or guys like Keon Coleman, who, second year in the league has the opportunity to blow up. I love all of that, Golden, Burden. There's a lot of really good names there. But if you want to talk about upside and win your league, you just got to take Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson. If you're punting quarterback, the draft analysis doesn't like it. In fact, they're going to tell me that I'm going to come in last place. What is this, 9th out of 11? But again, this is standard. I have no issue with this draft. In fact, I even love this draft. Let's see. Can I get the board up? I've been kind of really like this draft with Genty, Taylor, McBride. I probably would have changed Adams at the 401. I could see kind of preferring Omarion Hampton there for sure. I think he should have gone much earlier. I think he will go much earlier. Jameson Williams went far too high. All of these quarterbacks, 4 quarterbacks in the 3rd round seems steep. But of course, you might see 1 or 2 go in the 2nd round. So maybe that's just about right. But yeah, instead of Devontae Adams, Omarion Hampton, Kenneth Walker, who I love. I think those guys are probably the better bet there. So I would have preferred to have that pick back. Outside of that, Tet and Waddle, love it. Rome, we talked about him ad nauseum, love it. Tank, love it. Trey Benson at this stage here, which is the end of the 9th round. Could have gone Nick Chubb, who has the potential to, at least early in the season, lead that backfield. Is Woody Marks, able to carry a heavy load? Probably not. So if Joe Mixon is out for an extended period, as it seems to be at the moment, even though they're not really saying that, I do like Nick Chubb, but Trey Benson, he's just a young gun, and he's pushing for reps with James Conner. In fact, I want to get that James Conner news for you, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it up while we're streaming. So we shall see. But Steph Diggs, love the value there, and then Fields and Richardson. So I'm very happy with this draft. Look, if the algorithm doesn't like your draft, whether you're on Yahoo, ESPN, Sleeper, Fantasy Pros, the algorithm doesn't like your draft, you're probably doing something right. So that was 2 standard mock drafts for you for the price of 1 here, because we wanted to push it to an hour and get you as much actionable info as possible. Look, we are Adjust the Ranks. We do daily mock drafts as part of the fantasy football universe. We also got guys in the fantasy football universe like Dynasty Dog Mike Anthony, who runs his Dynasty Dogs channel, and we got Essie Romero, who runs his Debbie Planet. Those guys were over here doing a mock draft just yesterday and giving you all that detail. We also have a thread on Twitter where we're kind of just keeping all of these mocks in order, 30 mocks in 30 days for you, and we're going to mix it up as much as possible, give you some standard. We did a half PPR yesterday. Those guys did. 2 days ago, we had on August 1st, we had a full PPR. That's all on our YouTube channel. So please go check it out. It's all going to be there for you to help you prepare for your upcoming fantasy draft. So thank you very much for joining us. We are the Fantasy Football Universe. I am Jeremy Schulman at FF_Rebel on Twitter. And, like and subscribe if you like the content. And we hope to see you back next time. Bye.
Mock, yeah, ing, yeah, bird, yeah, 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 mockingbird.